It's hard to imagine, but when this was first rolled out, there was a fear that she'd end up more Cinderella than Queen of the Skies.
Rotate.
Only 2 months after the 747 first flew, the British and French tested their vision of the future. Concorde, traveling twice the speed of sound.
At this time, aviation's at a crossroads. Can we all enjoy the supersonic speed of getting to our destinations quickly, or will we be traveling with 450 others? So nobody knew at this time, but the race was on.
If supersonic won that battle, Boeing had built the hump into the Jumbo's nose so it could be turned into a lowly freighter. But Concorde faced a barrage of American environmental and business lobbies.
So with the final scorecard tallied, over 1,500 747s were built, and only 14 Concordes saw service with British Airways and Air France. So you be the judge.
28 airlines signed up for the 747.
362 passengers.
They'll need new airports to take care of these.
Man, how are they ever going to get that thing in the air?
And what to do with all those passengers.
Airports themselves can't as yet cope with huge numbers of passengers suddenly descending on them.
And I remember as a crew walking step by step, looking up at that aircraft, and the closer we got, the bigger it got, and thinking, how are we going to do this?
Seats as far as you could see. It was very frightening, as in, you know, to start
overwhelming.
that. Yeah. Every country you went to, crowds standing watching it come in.
As test flights and tours created Jumbo mania, Britain's BOAC, later to become British Airways, sent their man Hugh Dibley to America to learn how to fly a Jumbo. There were no simulators, just the real thing.
I think about 10 of us on the flight deck watching this, and you have no idea for the first landing how high you are up on the ground. It really was like landing a block of flats. They thought they were landing when they were over the beginning of the runway. The wheels were still over the grass. Yes, it was very nice to be able to look down on the peasants and the mini jets below.
As Hugh grappled with his flying block of flats, designers got to work on ocean liner style interiors in every color.
The size and scope of this airplane allowed the size of people's imaginations to grow. The imaginations of the designers went wild, and it was not only upstairs, the lounge where they could do this, but it could go downstairs, this giant cargo hold, and turn that into a lounge area. And so you had these wonderful ideas like the Tiger Lounge, where you have the spiral staircase going down and these wild fabrics and mirrors and shag carpeting.
It's a race for luxury that continues on big jets to this day. There were even new treats in economy. Movies were in and fares were down. We've brought Hugh back to London's Heathrow with Al Bridger, British Airways' top 747 pilot.
Slightly different than what you're used to.
Well, this is a big change, of course.
Flatbed seats.
American and most Asian carriers have retired the 747 for smaller, fuel-efficient craft. But BA revamped these even larger modern ones for 5 more years.
So, this is where you want to come and see then, Hugh. Come and see the flight deck.
Of course, it's all by screens, whereas we had clockwork instruments.
It wasn't all clockwork. Boeing had installed space-age autopilot, but the British didn't trust it, so put in their own sextants, the things used by sail ships to read the stars.
The first 3 Jumbos in BOAC had sextant mounts in case the automatic navigation didn't work. It was used in the Apollo project. We would go down a corridor, and on the right would be all the Apollo astronauts. Those aircraft going because they were taken to the moon.
Yeah.
And on the other side of the corridor would be the pictures of the Jumbo, because it was the same system.
Absolutely. But there's just something about it, isn't it? It's iconic, it's fabulous, and you have a real affinity to it, and a love for it.
Modern 747s are a long way from the jet engines Hugh had to deal with.
We were having, I think, 6 engine changes per week. Engine failures were fairly routine. You had to watch it all the time, because there were occasions when it didn't work very well.
Yeah. Whereas these are fantastic. They are so reliable.
I'm sure.
It was Pan Am that made the world's inaugural 747 flight from New York to London. It certainly didn't go to plan. I've been tracing the crew and finally tracked Elise to Oslo in Norway.
Amazing to meet you.
So this is you on the first flight?
Yes, just after landing in London, and me between the captains.
Does it still fit?
Yes. See it?
But the glitz of that very first flight was tarnished by those troublesome jet engines.
Something happened for takeoff. One of the engines heated up. Some people said they had seen flames. Maybe they did, or imagined. But the captain decided to go back to the terminal.
The world's press watched the world's biggest jet return.
Disappointed?
Well, sure.
On the tarmac, Pan Am's Ron Marasco.
There was a state of shock throughout the facility. This was our worst nightmare.
Any sense of fear?
No, I mean, they said something was burning and we got off.
A man-made giant crossing the Atlantic. Cynics had heard that before.
And there were people outside who were demonstrating that this had all the earmarks of the Titanic.
Some people even went off the airplane and said, never again. They never came back. I think it was about 30 passengers who didn't want to go back.
When we inspected the engine, there was molten metal in the tailpipe.
Hidden away, the only other 747 was secretly swapped.
We arrived at the hangar. The painters had just finished stenciling the name of the original departure aircraft, Clipper Young America.
7 hours late, paint still wet. They tried again.
It was very, very, very quiet when it took off.
Do you think people were nervous?
So of course, it's always a new thing. So we decided to start serving champagne. And our purser told us, hey ladies, come on, keep serving champagne. They won't know, even if you're up in the air or on the ground.
They landed safely. Today, those early engine problems might have grounded the fleet. Back then, the size of the 747 made better headlines than its glitches.
The airplane can fly on 3 engines. The initial 747 engine problems, there had never been anything like that in the industry, either before or since.
Those became footnotes, frankly. At the end of the day, the plane was a huge success.
In the early days, Pan Am and BOAC left for New York at the same time with their new jumbos. The race was on.
They had a flight to New York, and it was always a little competition to get there. We always managed to get away first. We always managed to get to Kennedy first.
Yeah, well, nothing's changed.
Yes.
It's just pride.
Hugh hasn't flown a 747 in 25 years. This one's off to Philadelphia, but Al has a treat for him.
So it should all come flooding back there, shouldn't it?
Can Hugh still land a 747 at Heathrow in this replica simulator?
Oh, it feels familiar.
Nicely lined up. Much nicer on profile.
It's surprising.
100, 30, 20, 10.
Oh, you want to do your own, don't you, Hughes? He was terrific. Yeah, straight back in like he'd never been away.
Yeah, it's just a beautiful aeroplane. It's nice to fly.
I don't think Boeing thought that it had got the lifespan that it was going to have, but as I say, they just got it right, and they got everything right about it, and that still sits today. It's a beautiful aircraft. It flies fantastic. It's got some life left in it still.
So how much longer can the 747 last? Today, the Airbus 380 is larger, but both have disappointing order books. Per seat, smaller twin-engine aircraft can cost 30% less to fly. At Boeing in Seattle, the man in charge of the 747's future is also a fan.
This is me, December 1973.
The 747's passenger days are fading.
It's not the end. It's the end for passengers and flight attendants, but not so the pilots if they're interested in flying freight, because this airplane can do something no other freighter can. There's not a dry eye in the many farewell flights that I've participated in.
I'm gonna miss you, girl.
Around the world, they're saying goodbye. Airlines around the world have had massive farewells to their 747s, but once the last champagne has been sipped, this is where it ends. Row upon row rest here in American deserts. Earlier this year, the very last US passenger 747 and its captain flew into retirement together.
I couldn't have asked for a better wind-up on my own career. To the desert now, it's all done. No more US carriers flying the mighty 747-400. It'll be missed. If you're flying a 747-400, you're flying every pilot's dream.
This is where the whales come to rest when they're done with their job.